how do you plan to cultivate this community while trying to extract the talent and mindshare from other altchains?
Yeah, of course. First thing first, massive shout out to our community. We'd like to take a step back and look at the big picture here. Do we believe that blockchain is the next future technology? I think all of these communities would agree and say straight up yes to that, right? So that means that just more and more and more people are going to get attracted to the blockchain space. So why fight for the very, very few early adopters that are around now, which is just a tiny, tiny, tiny share of the pie, right? Of course, it'd be great to bring people over to jump ship from other chains because they like Kadena, but we don't want to get into these turf wars. One of our main focuses is to attract new people to the blockchain space, especially bringing people over, as I mentioned, from Web 2 to Web 3 and make the pie bigger for everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben, and as usual, I am your host for today's podcast. Today, we have Francesco Melpignano, the CEO of Kadena Eco. Welcome to the podcast, Francesco.
Hey, Ben. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for taking the time and having me on today.
Yeah, great. Hopefully, I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's perfect.
Okay, great. Before we dive in, right, I like the speakers to kind of introduce themselves a little bit. Firstly, how did you get started in crypto and what led you to Kadena?
Yeah, so before going down the crypto rabbit hole, still nowhere near the end here, I think, but I was an entrepreneur. I had my own robotics company. We had a device for sports field maintenance automation. Towards, I think, 2017, something like that. I got into blockchain, interested in Bitcoin, very interested in Ethereum and smart contracts. I started learning some Solidity. And already back then, I started to pick up on some of the pain points of it. It was already impossible to have it talk properly to a front end. Web3.js was at its very infancy of days. I realized a lot of the limitations that ETH as a blockchain had and Solidity as a smart contract language had in the future. But I really, truly believed in the vision of, dApps and what later came to be, the bustling ecosystem of DeFi today and the crazy market that's around NFTs. This stuff at the time was very much still a proof of concept. After I moved on from my robotics company, I knew that my next adventure would definitely be in the blockchain space. So it started, I actually met Doug at a bar and we hit it off. And he started telling me about Kadena. I found it super, super interesting. It was really put together a lot of the stuff that I learned in the past with Solidity and architecture with Ethereum and all those things. And then I met the rest of the team, particularly Will and Stu. They explained Chainweb to me. I got hooked, to say the least, and I'm here. The rest is history.
Great. So they already kind of a little bit hints of what Kadena is. So could you explain what Kadena is and also Kadena Eco?
Yeah, of course. So Kadena is the only next-gen layer one that's innovating on proof of work. We've actually taken proof of work and scaled it infinitely. This is because the base layer of Kadena has multiple chains in it, and we can keep on adding chains to the system. So we launched with 10 chains in the system. We scaled up to 20 in the August of 2020, and now we've tested the system up to hundreds of thousands of chains. You could think of each chain in there as the equivalent of a little more than the throughput of Ethereum as it is today in its proof of work form. So today we're already 20 times have 20 times more throughput than Ethereum. And as the demand comes our way, we're going to scale that up to thousands, then hundreds of thousands of times more. So basically, the way that we've scaled blockchain is by scaling it horizontally with a truly sharded system. So we've been on mainnet for almost 2 years. With also our own smart contract language called Pact, which is very easy to pick up. You can tell there's a bunch of sort of devs out there from the community, learn the ropes of Pact, hacking away, making cool new dApps that are not possible in the EVM ecosystems. And also Pact is, apart from being easy to read, it's easy to learn as we have a few projects. One of them is CADEX that's out there building a decentralized finance hub. And I was very amazed that their devs that joined the team, I believe in December, picked up the smart contract language within weeks, are now writing highly complex, financial instruments with Pact itself. And they all seem very happy with what they're doing and realize the power of the smart contract language itself. So now the latest initiative is Kadena Eco that I'm leading as CEO. We brought on Paul Su, reining in from Decasonic, a very well-known VC fund here in Chicago, where actually I am on a work trip right now. And he was joined by Tyler Benster as head of tech adoption, and by Dan Wiggins as head of gaming. And we're continuing to scale the team for various verticals and various initiatives. But the main point of Kadena Eco is that Kadena as a blockchain itself and the Kadena ecosystem around it is at an inflection point for growth. We've had a plan for Kadena Eco for several months, if not almost a year, but we waited for the right time for sort of this crux of people coming to build on Kadena, and now they need some centralized support from us. And the point there is to assist builders, whatever stage they may be with their idea, to come over to Kadena and come innovate here and get some great new dApps going within our ecosystem.
Great. So like you mentioned before, Kadena is one of the only proof of work chains now, the new ones. And a lot of questions people ask is why proof of work? Isn't it, not that really scalable? You kind of hinted at sharding already, but I kind of want to dive a little bit more on how does Kadena try and address the blockchain trilemma. There are a lot of interesting terminologies I've heard online. You already mentioned Chainweb and Pact. I also heard about Kuro. Could you explain a little bit more about these terms?
Yeah, cool. So, Pact, just to give you a quick idea on the terms, Pact is our smart contract language that I mentioned before, written from the ground up, domain-specific language for blockchain, invented by our very own Stuart Popejoy. From his background in trading. Sort of the backstory for Pact, I'll keep it short, is that he wrote this language for sales traders at JP Morgan to write these algorithms that could be written very fast and wouldn't blow up the system. So the same concept applies to the blockchain sphere, where you want to give sort of developers the power to innovate fast, but you also don't want to give them tools where they can shoot themselves in the foot. For example, a lot of the hacks and a lot of the bugs in Solidity come from just inherent language design in there, which aren't necessarily something that you need in a blockchain-based system. Because anyways, there you're limited by gas, you're limited by how much you can write inside a block and things along those lines. But the trilemma comes down to Chainweb, which is our public blockchain architecture. So if we define the trilemma as a blockchain being scalable, decentralized, and secure, we're actually the only layer one blockchain out there that solves this problem without compromise. And this is because traditionally proof of work has always been secure and decentralized. There's never been any argument to proof of work sort of fulfilling these two main categories. The main issue has been scalability. And as I mentioned before, we managed to solve this by infinitely scaling the number of chains that are in the underlying layer of Kadena. So as I mentioned, we started off with 10, we scaled up to 20, and now we can scale up to any number. So, our TPSs, since people like to throw sort of this word around, can scale up to any number that is necessary down the line. So as more users come to Kadena, we can keep on adding chains to the system, and we can always accommodate new users. And what does that mean practically? It means that for developers and for users, it means that gas fees are going to be low forever. Because, as the chain gets congested, you can keep on adding chains to the system, and then each sort of chain takes up some of the congestion that happened to be elsewhere.
Just to clarify, when you say adding chains, are they actually new chains, like another chain ecosystem?
Yeah. So basically, the chains in Kadena, they're all independent from each other, but they're all cryptographically connected. So the entire network advances together, but each chain in the system is actually independent from another. So when you transact within one blockchain, it looks a lot like Ethereum today. You put a transaction on a block, the block gets mined, it gets confirmed, et cetera, et cetera. In Kadena, when you want to do anything across two chains, instead of it being one transaction, it's two. Say I want to send some coins from chain 1 to chain 18. The first transaction physically burns these coins on chain 1, and this produces a math proof, right? And then as blocks get mined in the entire network, sort of the state of the blockchain gets propagated to all of the chains, and then you can take this proof to the target chain, and it will verify with just pure math that this happened on the origin chain and mint you the coins over there. And the thing to note there is that from the UX perspective, on the user's end, it's like they're only doing one transaction, because only the first transaction needs to be signed by a wallet. The second one can be propagated automatically by another innovation that we have called gas stations, where users don't need to pay for their own gas for transactions to go into the blockchain.
I mean, that's really cool, because you actually answered my next question, which is about the UX. Because I think a lot of problems people have nowadays, even between Ethereum L2 solutions, it's the bridging issue. You kind of have to bridge one asset here, and you transact, and you click it here again. It's quite annoying. It's not very user friendly. But if you abstract it all behind, I think that's a really good use case perspective.
Yeah, I mean, ours is, it's built into the protocol. It's built into the chain web algorithm, how you transact from the chains that are within the same system. I'm saying separate chains, but you can actually think about one system, because the chains need to advance together. So the beautiful thing about chain web is that the more chains you add to the system, the more efficient it gets, from a transaction throughput perspective, from an energy consumption perspective, et cetera, et cetera. And then in terms of UX, we're also solving a huge problem that is happening right now with EVM-based chains, and even Rust language-based chains, is that interacting from a front end to the blockchain itself is very complicated. And it requires very heavy libraries like Web3.js. So what's the practical example of this? It means that, hey, have you ever used the dApp from your phone? Yeah, you still need to open this dApp from within a wallet, because this wallet needs to inject this complicated code into the browser itself for you to be even able to use this, right? And what Kadena is trying to do is trying to recognize all the amazing advancements that Ethereum and smart contracts have brought to us, and all the amazing potential, and making it accessible for folks coming over from the Web2 world. It's great to have all these products, but we need to make the stuff easy to use. We're not going to hit mainstream adoption until everything is as easy to use as existing websites today. And that's also one of the main roles of Kadena Eco, which is bring blockchain to the billions, and make sure we get to the point of mainstream adoption. I don't think sometimes people realize how early really we are to this space.
Completely agree.
I mean, for me, it's been a few years, but it definitely feels a lot longer than that. But I'm still confident there's a lot of room to grow.
I mean, 1 year in crypto is like 5 years in real life, right? Okay, there are two things you raised, actually. I'll tackle the first one. You mentioned a little bit about energy consumption, and I think the biggest fears about proof of work is always, it consumes a lot of energy. How does Kadena address this? Yeah,
I mean, so our mining, as I said, because Kadena is scalable, you can think about it as a mining 2.0. because, as I mentioned, in the underlying layer, sort of all the blockchains running in parallel, Kadena, as you increase that number of chains, say like from 20, all of a sudden we go to 20,000, the amount of electricity that you need in the system is still constant. So actually, we have this unique feature that as more people come and use our blockchain, the footprint per transaction goes down. Because say right now, like we're at 20 chains and we scale up to 20,000, each transaction then is going to be 1,000 times more efficient because it still takes the same amount of electricity, right? So we recognize, the importance of proof of work in terms of innovation for mankind in the game theoretic side, but we are here to make it just as secure, but more scalable and more efficient.
Great. It kind of sounds like, it's fixed costs, right? So this electricity bill is fixed for life as long as more people start using it. Like you mentioned, footprint per user drops. It's pretty cool. So you mentioned Kadena Eco, right? And I think we kind of understand a little bit in how it's trying to build the ecosystem, but could you elaborate on what specific areas that Kadena Eco is focused on?
Yeah, of course. So, the 1,000-foot overview here is that Kadena Eco is here to create a healthy ecosystem for Kadena and for Kadena to become the premier layer one for smart contracts and anything possible on a blockchain. So Kadena Eco is going to have 5 main components. The first one is an incubator where we're going to get hands-on with companies coming our way, potentially get some projects underway that need our expertise. For example, next generation wallets, which I'm not quite going to tease yet, but the things that are only possible with our architecture and with Pact. Like for example, like thinking about using your phone, your watch, and any other devices to come together to a multi-sig. That's something that's way more secure than even a single ledger, or any sort of cold storage device. Then the second initiative is an accelerator, which is going to look a lot like a traditional accelerator model like Techstars or Y Combinator, where we're taking cohorts of promising startups building on Kadena and sort of providing them with the resources, mentoring, funds, and other things they need to really get to the next stage of development and sort of raise large funds. So then what we have to support these companies going through the accelerator is a traditional venture fund, which we'll probably be raising very soon, some point this year. We brought in Paul Su with his expertise running Decasonic for many years, a very well-known and successful venture fund in Chicago. And that's where we'll provide follow-on capital to startups building on Kadena that are at a slightly later stage of their existence, and need significant capital to scale or to bring their idea, to mass market. And there we're not going to be limited to, investing in companies built from the ground up, but we'll also have enough capital to get companies in the Web2 space, and we really have a lot of interest for this, that want to build out Web3 products for their users. And they found that Kadena is a very, very easy platform for them to do this because they don't need to modify their code base. They can just call Kadena and Pact on demand and add these small Web3 offerings as they educate their user base, which could be already millions of users, on getting familiar with Web3. Then we're also going to spin up an R&D program where its purpose is going to be to bridge all this amazing innovation that's happening at the Kadena core engineering team, which, it's all these incredible advancements in the blockchain space, but they're not really visible to the human eye, right? Because this sits on a back end. It's all theoretical and it's all great, and we're the ones that are very familiar with it. So the role of the R&D department is to take these amazing advancements and make them easy to see and easy to use for builders coming our way. For example, we'll start building some front ends to showcase some of the power of this stuff, leveraging things like gas stations, which will revolutionize how your average person will interact with blockchain technology. Then last but not least, which we'll probably have a lot more news on shortly, is the grants program, where we're looking to get community projects of all shapes and sizes where they're building natively on Kadena, or they're looking to come over from other chains to Kadena, or they're looking to transitions from Web 2 to Kadena and are testing out the waters. We're going to give people no strings attached grants to come and test out Kadena. And we're sure that once they get familiar with our ecosystem, they're going to be here to stay. So yeah, that's the 5 initiatives that we're ambitiously undertaking this year.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of things to think about. Are there any particular aspects or projects that you're excited about, or any hints that you can give regarding the kind of grants that Kadena might give?
Yeah, so soon in terms of grants, we'll be announcing a program there. We're getting a lot of inbound requests from companies of all shapes and sizes, with all sorts of expertise behind them. So I can't really tease who
Oh, sure,
we give
no,
grants
understand.
out to yet. I do want to give out a shout out to our launch pads out there that have received grants. Hypercent, Katie Launch did a great job with IDOs on chain. Also CADEX, DeFi Hub, building a DEX, and all sorts of other DeFi instruments on Kadena. But then the other thing that we're undertaking internally is Marmalade, which is an NFT tooling platform, which is our effort of, as we've always done with all the rest of our technology, pushing forward the frontier of what it means to have an NFT and what you can do with an NFT. Like one example of what you can do with Marmalade, and the punchline there is mint to marketplace. Marmalade mint to marketplace is that you can actually define your own marketplace rules when you mint the NFT. So say, I'm minting some whatever punk, and when I mint this JPEG, I attach to it sort of the marketplace rules for it. So I can do things such as enforce that a royalty gets paid back to me, the minter, every time this thing changes hands. Or things like a price floor, that I can ensure that this thing will never be sold under a certain amount, et cetera, et cetera. Or things like a right of first refusal to buy this thing back if it ever gets sold or whatever the price is. Or it could get even more fine grained, like, hey, really defining what the contractual rules and ownership and sort of rights are over this image and who's allowed to use it, distribute it, et cetera, et cetera. Like really pushing forward the frontier of what the word non-fungible means, right? Which in itself doesn't really mean anything, right? Because like fungible is a word, non-fungible is pretty much everything else in the world. So we really are trying to bring you to that point where, if when NFTs fulfill their promise, that it really covers everything and not just the low-hanging fruit that people are looking at today, which is, trading JPEGs. But the long story short is that minting a marketplace within your NFT means that you no longer need services like OpenSea that enforce these things in a centralized way, right? Because if you want royalties, if you want price floors, at the end of the day, you're trusting OpenSea to enforce these things for you, right? And then what's decentralized about that? For me, on OpenSea looks a lot more like a Web 2 company than it does like a Web 3 company.
I mean, they are raising equity. There's no token, so yeah, it's Web 2 company.
And they're providing centralized APIs to make their service readily available. It points a lot towards that direction. What we want to build at Kadena, what our goal is to build truly decentralized applications that are on par with our ethos and the ethos of what blockchain is supposed to bring to the world.
I mean, that's really exciting because from what I hear, it's essentially, taking NFTs to where it's supposed to be, where everyone keeps talking about. And from what I understand, you can program the NFTs. Everyone can program the NFTs from day one. And it's kind of fulfilling the promise of eventually, you can embed a lot of other things like contracts, agreements, etc., into an NFT. So it can become a time where the NFT acts like a will, acts like a contract. And you guys are providing tools for that.
Yeah, and these are all things that can easily be done on chain. There's no need to rely on centralized services for something that natively sits on a blockchain. And we're pushing for this frontier, not only also by talking to gaming companies that do need more customizable standards on these types of things. in terms of making things interoperable within games or powering up items within a game. And most importantly, it means that finally, like game and content creators can easily, without too much hassle, have their own marketplaces within the game without designing a whole other economy around there.
You mentioned quite a few projects, and I'm quite curious on Kadena's growth at the moment. Are there any interesting data points that you can share?
Yeah, I think we're at over, last time I checked, which was a couple of days ago, we're at over 100 dApps led by the community, which is just explosive growth in terms of where we were just a few months back. And that's what I was saying about being an inflection point for growth, and why launching Kadena Eco right now is very, very important, to go out and support these builders that are really just coming our way and need some support both on the tech side and monetarily and on advisorship and all those type of things. And then some other data points is our hash power keeps on growing. I think it's pretty much an all-time high every day that I look. Daily transactions are growing massively. I think we hit all-time high a couple days ago with some IDOs happening on chain. Accounts on chain and just general activity is growing as we speak. As people learn about Kadena, they love doing stuff with zero gas fees. And as also some of these protocols that I'm mentioning launch, that's going to be even more activity coming our way. So shout out to all the builders out there that are making this possible. And we're here to support you in any way we can.
Talk quite a bit about the growth of Kadena, but I'm sure there's quite a lot of challenges as well. In your opinion, what are the biggest challenges you face in building this ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, when you're coming to Kadena, you're coming to a nascent ecosystem. There's no hiding that we don't have the same tooling that something like EVM and Ethereum compatible chains have, because that was almost a decade in the making to make it easy to deploy a smart contract for you and to test it into all those tools. But we are confident that as we iron out the stuff, it's going to become. It is already easy to build on Kadena, but it's going to become by far the easiest blockchain to build on, and that's why it's blockchain for the mainstream, blockchain for the billions. Right now, Kadena is, since it is nascent stages, both of the ecosystem and of its growth, it's for real builders and real visionaries. It's not a place where you can copy paste, replace the meme that you use for marketing and shill. Like, that playbook does not work on Kadena. As I mentioned, like, it's for real visionaries and real builders that want to do something cool and do something new and push forward the frontier of what it means to build a blockchain-based company. So I'd like to say that we're a place for innovators and forward thinkers only.
Yeah, one thing I noticed about most chains in general is that everyone has their own cult-like community. Everyone has their own maxis, their ETH maxis, the Solana maxis, etc. And I'm sure Kadena has their own maxis as well. My question is, how do you plan to cultivate this community while trying to extract the talent and mindshare from other altchains?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first thing first, like, massive shout out to our community. You guys are awesome. Like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like, really, thank you so much for all the support. It's incredible every time you guys post, every time you guys comment. I hope that we're doing right by you. We're doing our best to, be transparent with what's going on our end and to provide you with all the support that we can. Whether you've been here for a long time or just got, or just joined the Kadenians recently, we know that we value you. And, we'd love to do anything that we can to sort of keep the strong bond of people spread out all over the world and the passion that is Kadena that keeps them together. So yeah, you mentioned about like taking other alt-chain communities, like getting mindshare from other alt-chains, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that front, I think these alt-chain wars kind of stupid. We'd like to take a step back and look at the big picture here. Do we believe that blockchain is the next future technology, I think all these communities would agree and say like straight up yes to that, right? So that means that just more and more and more people are going to get attracted to the blockchain space. So why fight for the very, very few early adopters that are around now, which is just a tiny, tiny, tiny share of the pie, right? If we're talking developers, like what percentage of developers today develop on Solidity? I'm guessing like less than 0.1%, right? Like a lot of people write code out there. Just don't that for those trying to hire a Solidity developer out there, tell me how many actually write Solidity. So like why fight for that tiny mindshare when we have this language that's easily accessible to all the rest of the developers in the world? So, what we're trying to do is, of course, it'd be great to bring people over to jump ship from other chains because they like Kadena, but we don't want to get into these turf wars. Like one of our main focuses is to attract new people to the blockchain space, especially bringing people over, as I mentioned, from Web 2 to Web 3 and make the pie bigger for everyone.
I guess this is the embodiment of we are all going to make it. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting discussion so far. And I kind of want to round it up with a last question. There are already some hints, but what are Kadena Eco's plans for 2022?
Well, I talked about those very 5 ambitious components that bring together Kadena Eco. So, mission number 1 is to execute on all 5 of those verticals. They're all equally important to each other. And I'm confident we can do it. And the way that we're going to do it is by keeping on building this world-class team. As I mentioned before, the first person to come on is Paul Su, massively experienced in the venture in the Web3 space, background doing gaming at Zynga, led product and some operations there. So really an OG to how to hyperscale companies. Then the other one is Dan Wiggins, who was also worked at Zynga back in the day, but has some venture experience and is a gaming OG. I was actually with him in San Francisco at the Game Developers Conference there last week. And it was like walking around royalty. Everyone was saying hi to him. I wasn't expecting that, Like we're going to keep on bringing top players like Dan and also Tyler, who joined us as tech adoption lead a few weeks before that. Also amazing guy, venture experience, currently PhD at Stanford. So we're going to keep on building this team because with our ambitious roadmap, only world-class leaders and world-class collaborators can make this happen. But like one of the things I'm most excited about is, killer dApps coming over to Kadena and showcasing the power of the Kadena blockchain itself. There's a lot of things that are only possible in Pact. And I was mentioning, there's a lot that we've done sort of in the back end, core blockchain innovations to push forward what's possible to write on a blockchain. And now is the time for new companies to come and take advantage of this and build front ends for people to like really grasp what's going on, right? Because as I mentioned before, like it's one thing to make this crazy new innovation that sits on a back end and no one can see. And then something else is once you have a website that's easy to use and easy to play with, and also comparable to something else, that will really blow people out of the water. So really, I'm really most excited to get, that 1, 2, 5 killer dApps coming over to Kadena and fully leveraging our tech. Because it's just taking an idea that works on another chain and bringing it over to us would really be short selling what's possible on Kadena. Because, as I mentioned, Pact brings forward a lot of innovation that you can't make anywhere else. For example, like CADEX is launching gas-free swaps. We'll have this concept in Marmalade of making your own marketplace and defining your own rules for your NFT within there. So, we're really, really excited at the prospects of what's to come. And there's a couple companies that, are just in their early stages, but I'm sure will help push forward what's possible in the space. And then one last sneak preview I'll give is, stay tuned for an enhanced grants program. That's going to be led by Kadena Eco, where builders can come our way, and we'll be there to sort of give you some funding and help you every step of the way. Please do keep on reaching out. We're inundated with requests at the moment, but we'll surely get back to all of you as soon as we have a second to process everyone.
Great. I think that's about wraps up this discussion, Francesco. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
For the latest crypto prices, visit our website. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date on the latest crypto trends.